Hello and welcome back to Unpopular People.
We believe that listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success.
Today in our interview, Mike Miller from the Gold Coast.
Mike Miller is a professional kickboxer. He's teaching to use the kettlebells and he lived in Hong Kong for quite a while.
He does personal training sessions too. You will find out more about this in the show notes.
He's also an actor. When he lived in Hong Kong, he played in many TV shows and also big movies like Knock Off with Jean-Claude van Damme.
If you want to learn how to be successful by making other people successful, stay tuned and listen to this upcoming episode.
To find out more about unpopular people, please visit our website www.unpopularpeople.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.
And check out our services in the service section of our website.
And now have fun with this interview.
With Michael Miller. All right. Hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you for your time. And we have a couple of questions for you. But first of all, to let our guests know who you are, maybe you can introduce yourself and let us know where were you born and how did you grow up?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Miller, and I was born in Brisbane, Australia. And so I guess like most people, I had, normal childhood. I grew up with two great parents. My mother and father were always supportive of anything that I wanted to do. When I was really young, probably around 10 or 11, I was really interested in martial art movies, but there wasn't really much opportunity to learn martial arts. And then when I was about 13, that was when I started training. And I started training in Taekwondo. And I think my learning to do martial arts had a major impact on the direction that I followed in my life. With regards to, I think from the first time I started learning, one thing I wanted to do was, my goal was to teach martial arts when I left school. But also, I loved the martial arts so much because I loved Kung Fu movies, because I first started training probably in the late 70s. So that was when a lot more Kung Fu films were being released in the West, and you could see them on VHS. Because I did Taekwondo, I was a really big fan of all the Chinese actors that were really good at kicking, and a lot of them were Korean. So, the Taekwondo connections there. Yeah, I loved kicking because I felt like anyone could punch. You can teach someone to punch very quickly, but kicking's quite a skill, and you need flexibility and you need balance, and it takes a long time to kind of perfect, kicks. So as a teenager, I think I was in grade 9 when I started training, and that was really my focus until I left school. Of course, I wanted to do well at school, but one of the big things I noticed was once I started learning martial arts and I had that focus and that discipline, I went from actually being an average student to above average student. Because I kind of say this to anyone, I think martial arts is great because it really does teach you how to focus and how to have discipline, and then you can apply that to anything that you do, whether you're a child at school or an adult who works. And I especially think it's relevant these days because there's not a lot of discipline in our world like there used to be, because it's quite a taboo thing, to discipline people and discipline children. But I think, the benefits from martial arts is just so good. And especially, you get the bonus of learning how to protect yourself if you need to. But I think the confidence that it gave me and the focus has helped me to, whatever I want to do is to go for that goal and reach that goal until I get there. Whereas I think a lot of people who don't have that discipline or even that mental toughness, when things get difficult, they kind of throw on the towel, so to speak. Whereas I just will always just keep going until I achieve what I want to achieve. So yeah, and then I kept training all the way through high school and got my black belt just after I finished grade 12, and I literally at 17 and a half became a full-time martial arts teacher. Yeah. So that was like my first job, really. Like when I was 15, I did a few part-time jobs, but that was my first job. And it was quite interesting because, you know, a lot of the people that I used to teach were adults who were like a good 4 or 5 years older than me. But I think because it's what I wanted to do, I kind of projected this persona that made me seem older than I actually was. Plus, all the guys I worked with had mustaches, so I grew a mustache, and that kind of added a few years. So, but yeah, I love teaching martial arts because I love the martial arts itself. It was just great to pass that on to people. And I learned early on about being really humble, and maybe we were too humble, but so we never thought of ourselves as being very good. But my aim was always to make everybody better than me. I always say to people, I kind of thought of myself as a star maker, not a star. So I wanted to make all my students into amazing black belts and be able to do things I couldn't do. Whereas, you know, you see a lot of teachers or instructors, they're really good at something, they kind of hold back when it comes to teaching people those type of things. You know, you can see that their ego kind of stops them because they're afraid that someone might be better than them. But I think because I developed this humility type mindset, that was never a barrier for me. So I just always wanted to, you know, help people and teach them to be as best as they could. And when I learnt martial arts, it was in the late 70s. So, you know, in the West, it was only just kind of growing. And so the way we learnt was real old school, traditional type of training. And that's the kind of training that I always did with my students. And I think because I had the benefit of learning that way, I could pass that on to them. And it made my students of a certain level that was probably, you know, above other schools because they didn't quite have that same type of mindset with regards to training. You know, we've spoken about how a lot of people are motivated by, you know, how much money they can make doing something, whereas not necessarily let their passion kind of dictate and they, you know, the money will come. So I was always about making the best students I could, not having as many students as I could. And I think the payoff for that is they tell all their friends anyway or talk about you, so you end up getting lots of students and making that money anyway. Whereas I think if your focus is just to get as many people through the door as you can, you kind of lack in the area that's the most important part, and that's trying to give these people what they're paying you for. So that's something I always try to do when I taught my martial arts. And yeah, like I trained dozens and dozens of people to black belt and higher, and I probably taught thousands of students because I taught full-time as a Taekwondo teacher for about 10 years. So from the time I left school to the time I moved overseas. So what happened was, because of my love for I'll back up a little bit. So because of my love for martial art movies, I always wanted to do movies, but I probably never took the leap to try and do it. You know, we're all a little bit afraid to change our day-to-day routines and our lives that we live because they're comfortable and they're safe. And we think, oh, wow, you know, if I do that, that might be too big a risk. And so I think I always put it off because of that. But when I was in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with a rare type of kidney disease. So, and when I was diagnosed with the disease, I was told that I only had about 5 or 6 years before I'd have to go on dialysis. So when I was about 24, 25, I kind of said to myself, that's it. I'm going to prepare for 2 years. I'm going to move overseas and try and do movies, because if I don't, I'll always regret it. So what happened was I basically put in place a plan. I got acting lessons. I would obviously watch more fight movies. A couple of my friends and I, we were also very interested in the same things. So we would always do like fight choreography together and practice all the different movements and stuff. And one thing about fighting in movies is like, you know, you're not going to be the big star. So what's more important than being able to hit is being able to take a hit. So a reaction to being hit. So a reaction to, if someone punches me in the face, I need to move my head like this, or if someone punches me in the body, I need to fall like this. So a lot of our training was doing that, because if you talk to anyone that's ever gone to Asia to make movies, the emphasis is always not on the hitting, but how you react to being hit. So because I wanted to go to Hong Kong, that was very important. The other thing was, because I didn't have as much of an understanding about how the movies were made, I would look at the movie and go, oh, wow, I'm going to practice and do the kick like they did in the movie, not knowing that, you know, there's tricks to it. You know, they could use wires, or they could trick it with editing. So funnily enough, I could do these kicks when I went to Hong Kong that a lot of the actors needed wires for, or to cheat in editing. So it's quite funny, because I think it wasn't until I went to Hong Kong and I started to see these famous Kung Fu stars doing their martial arts, I kind of stopped and went, oh, hang on a minute. I'm a lot better than I think I am. You know what I mean? And not meaning that in like an egotistical way, but, you know, I think in a little bit of a way, our trainers always kept us a little bit down by telling us we're never good enough, because they never wanted us to actually see how good we were. So I think getting away from that was probably a good thing. And yeah, as I said, you know, I'd be on the set. One of my first movies was with Jet Li. And sometimes he would use a double, and sometimes he would do these kicks, and I'm like, well, I can kick just as fast as he can. But, you know, until you work on a movie, you don't realize the magic of film. Like, film's magical. Like, you do something like here, and I film it, and when you show it on the big screen, it just looks incredible. Whereas doing it here can look quite ordinary. And I worked on quite a few movies where you would look at the movie and go, oh my God, this is going to be so terrible when it's finished. And then you go and see the movie at the cinema and it's like a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. So, you know, film really is magical, because when you're taking into consideration editing, sound, you know, and just putting the whole thing together, it can turn out quite incredible.
Yes, thank you very much so far, and hello from my side as well. This was very interesting. How long did you stay in Hong Kong for, and how was the time? Could you tell us a little bit about this?
So I moved there at the end of 1991, so December 1991 I moved there, and I lived there until December 1998. So I was there 7 years. The first 2 years I was there, all my time was pretty much focused on films. I did do a little bit of teaching English part-time, but that was just to earn a little bit of extra cash initially. But mainly I did movies and television. Did a lot of TV shows. Obviously, initially you always start working as an extra, but after I got a little bit known, I started to get like roles where I'd have speaking parts and I'd do some acting, and then I got known by like the stunt coordinators and the stunt teams, and then I would get a lot more work that way. One of the drawbacks was my size, because Asian people have this this idea of Westerners being massive, like tall and big. And so a lot of times they were the kind of guys that got hired to fight with the Chinese actors. So my size, being the size of a Chinese person, was quite a bit of a disadvantage for me. So what I lacked in size, I had to try and make up for in my ability. But unfortunately, you know, if they were going to get someone small, they'd just get a Chinese person.
How tall are you?
5'7", so I'm short. But yeah, I mean, I didn't let that stop me. I still tried, and I still got quite a few roles. I probably worked in about 20, 25 movies and hundreds of TV shows. After the first 2 years I was there, the film industry had a bit of a recession. So they weren't making as many films and they weren't using as many Westerners. I kind of got there at the end of it, like the mid-'80s to the late 80s. They made heaps of action movies with Western protagonists, like playing the bad guys. And then the direction of the industry started to change a little bit. So there were less roles for foreign fighters and things like that. So I started doing a fair bit of security work, where I'd work in nightclubs, like being a doorman. And I also did a bit of bodyguarding work, because we also would do personal protection for celebrities. We would go to press conferences. We would go to concerts. Saw a lot of really cool free concerts. But yeah, it was good because my boss made films as well. So if we had a movie coming up, we could have time off from our regular security job. And then once we stopped filming, we could go back to it. So that was really good. About midway through my time in Hong Kong, I moved to China for about 6 months with some friends of mine. I was the only Westerner and everyone else was Chinese. And we went to this place, like a very remote place in like the middle of China, where people had probably never seen a Westerner before. And the city we were in, it was like being in like the 50s, you know. But it's a really interesting experience. And the part of China we were in was very close to the border of Russia. So a lot of people there were very like Western looking, like mixed, like they'd be Asian looking with like rounder eyes and that type of thing, because of like the cross culture stuff. And also being near the border of Russia, that part of China got really cold. So the food that they ate in that part of China, everything was full of chili. So like they would bring out a plate of vegetables and it would be more red than green because there was that much chili, you know, and I can't eat chili. So I was really limited in what I could eat. Like I literally lived on rice and eggs, and the eggs, they would cook your eggs and the eggs would be covered in salt. Yeah, just, you know, because it was also so hot in summer, like summer would be about 42 degrees and they'll obviously be freezing in winter. You know, everyone just sweat so much because of the humidity. So you'd, you know, I think they would have a lot of salt to make up for all the minerals they lost. But what was really interesting is you could never get cold drinks because no one had fridges. Like the little corner stores didn't have fridges, but they would always have ice blocks. So everyone lived on these like things which are like I don't know if you know what a Zupa Duper is. So it's like cordial, but frozen cordial, and it's long and thin. It's just like it's called a water ice block. So you just suck on it and chew them. You know, they're really good for cooling you down. And in China, you'd eat 4 or 5 of these a day, but the problem was they were so full of sugar, like just so sweet, like 10 times sweeter than ours here. But that was the only cold thing you could have. You could never get a cold drink. You know, so you'd be drinking more hot tea than you would be drinking cold water. But that was a really interesting experience. Like I lived there for 6 months and we did like live shows and we were trying to set up a TV station and we started trying and film a TV series, but there are a few problems with financing and stuff like that. So we eventually had to come back to Hong Kong. But it was good to kind of spend some time in China, because the people in China and the people in Hong Kong are very different. You know, Hong Kong, you know, there's so many people squashed together, and it's so fast paced, and it's you know, it's quite, you know, Chinese people are known for working very hard, so, you know, money's very important. Whereas you find people in China are a lot more laid back, because there's not the same kind of opportunities to earn the same type of money. Well, back then anyway. Now it's different. But yeah, back then, you know, you go back, that's over 20 something years ago. You know, the best jobs in China were in McDonald's or Hungry Jack's. Yeah. Otherwise, other than that, people wouldn't earn that much money.
For our listeners, Hungry Jack's is Burger King in the rest of the world, but Australia.
Yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, so China was interesting. And then I moved back to Hong Kong, and as I said, there wasn't a lot of movie stuff going on, so we did a lot more security work. I did my last year there, which was 98. So in 97, I was quite over the film industry because there weren't really many jobs. And then there was word that Van Damme was coming to town to do a movie, and I almost didn't go to the casting because I was just so jaded by being there. I'd been there 6 years and had hardly done any filming for a long time. So I went to this casting and didn't even really care, but I think that's why I got the job, because I was just so blasé about it. And then I ended up getting the call, and I ended up playing one of the main villains in the movie. It was called Knockoff, but it was a very interesting production because I didn't actually know what my role was until I turned up on the set. Wow. So I turned up on the set, hadn't seen the script, and all of a sudden they're telling me that, oh yeah, well you're the main villain, and this is what you're going to do. And I'm like, hang on a minute, no one told me this. So there's a little bit of pressure there, but luckily we filmed most of the fight scene I had with Van Damme in the beginning before I did much of the drama stuff, so that kind of eased me into it. But it's a very interesting production because what happened was the Chinese director that directed it, Choi Hark, is known for being, they call him like the Steven Spielberg of Asia. Okay. And he's very quirky and likes to do unusual things, and even with like the action, a lot of times stunt coordinators don't like him because he wants them to do something and they're like, well, human beings can't do that. You know what I mean? So a lot of times what's going on in his head just can't be put into film. But if you've seen the movie, it's shot really interestingly. There's a lot of really unusual camera shots. I think the shame about the movie was they went over production a lot. They finished filming, they shut down for a month, and then they had to get Van Damme to come back because they needed to do all these reshoots. So all that kind of made the finished product not as good as it probably could have been, because when they did the post-production, the production company actually took the movie away from the director and they edited it themselves. So if you look at the movie, the first half and the second half are quite different. Okay. So the first half's like awesome, and then the rhythm of the movie seems to change a little bit. And I think that's because, you know, someone other than the director edited it, and it just had a real big effect on the movie. Yeah. Because I filmed so much stuff that never made it into the finished product, which is a bit annoying. But, and then I think I did that movie, and then I did one movie after that movie, which we have this rape scene in a prison. It's like a prison shower scene, and we have to a bunch of us try to rape this inmate, but he beats us all up. So they set it up so they can have a fight scene. But in it, I had to show my bum because I pulled my pants down. So the camera angle is from behind my butt. And So, and the funny thing was, the story about that got all about Hong Kong, and everyone's like, "What's this about you in a rape scene and taking your pants down?" And so, you know, that made for a lot of good laughs. But that was a really fun fight scene to do, because we were all in shorts, and it was the middle of winter, and we're in this warehouse, and there was water everywhere. But unlike in Hollywood, the water was just cold. It wasn't heated. So middle of winter in Hong Kong, and we're filming for days and days and days in this cold water. So it was a bit uncomfortable, but that said, it was still kind of fun. But that was probably the last movie I worked on. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I was diagnosed with this health problem early on, and that's why I went overseas. So about towards the end of 98, I started to get quite sick, and I ended up in hospital because my kidneys were actually failing. So then I had to come back to Australia, and that's why I actually left Hong Kong. But I think the timing was kind of right, because by the time when I came home, I kind of thought to myself, it's probably time to come back anyway, because a few things were started to wear on me, and Hong Kong's a great place to live, but there are a few things about it that can kind of get to you after a while.
Yeah, okay, wow. There's so much information. It's so interesting, and I have so many questions too. But first of all, I want to know, can you speak Chinese or Mandarin? And second of all, so when you arrived in Hong Kong, and like you will answer now, if you could speak Mandarin or Cantonese, so what was the first thing you did? You arrived at the airport back then, and you probably weren't there before, and then you just like, wait. First time I've been. So what did you do? Like you arrived, and then where did you go first? Like, what was your plan? Like,
so I'd watched a lot of Hong Kong movies, so I knew a few Cantonese words, because that's what they spoke in Hong Kong back then, Cantonese. And I used to go to Chinatown in Brisbane all the time and watch Hong Kong films, and I met a couple of Chinese guys that were Hong Kong Chinese, so we became quite good friends. So what they did was, it just so happened that when I was going to Hong Kong, one of them had moved back there. So when I first arrived in Hong Kong, I'd booked a hotel for a few days, I think for about a week, and my friend was going to find me somewhere to stay. And funny story, I moved into this place, and in Hong Kong they have these places called love hotels. So basically what it is, it's a room where people go during the day or at night time.
And you booked this?
Yeah, well, that's where my friend no that's where my friend booked for me to stay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because his idea was, you know, it's clean and they change the sheets every day. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's okay initially. And so the one I stayed in was like 5 rooms on a hallway. So you had a hallway and there were 5 rooms attached. Luckily mine was like the biggest room, and then you'd go out and there'd be like a reception, and then you'd go down a set of stairs onto the street. So I was staying at this place for a week. Like initially it was my first week there, and at 6 o'clock in the morning there's a knock on my door, and I'm like, and I was asleep, and I woke up and I'm like, who's this? And I opened the door, and there's a Chinese guy there talking to me in Mandarin, and he's showing this card. And I like, are you a policeman? Are you police? Like, I couldn't speak the language, so I didn't know what he was talking about. And I thought, okay, it's the police doing a check. So I opened the door. The guy pushed me back onto my bed, and 2 more guys came in with him. And one guy had a gun, and 2 guys pulled knives out of their pants, so they had big long machetes, and they pushed me onto my bed, and they literally tied my hands behind my back and my legs together, and they proceeded to rob me. What? Yeah. So, and the bad thing was, the day before I'd just been to the bank and cashed all my traveller's checks, and I hadn't been to the bank to make an account to put all my money in, so I had all my money. So here I am on my bed, bound and gagged. They put a sheet over my head, my blanket over my head, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? Are these guys going to kill me and steal all my money? And then what they did was they got everybody from all the other rooms and brought them into my room and tied them up, and they robbed everybody. Yes. And then after about 20 minutes, they left, and a couple of the people who were tied up also got untied and left because they didn't want the police to come. And then the police came, and yeah. So my 5th day in Hong Kong, I was robbed at gunpoint. And I stayed for 7 years.
So, like, when you got, like, after the police came, like, what happened then? Like, how did you get your money back? And, like, yeah.
I never got my money back.
Yeah.
I had to contact my parents and get them to send me some money. And, but it didn't, I think I was just so excited and so keen and so determined to kind of stay there. Plus, all my friends back home had made bets how long I'd last. You know what I mean? They had money on me coming home soon. I do remember, like, I was impressed the police did follow up. They actually sent a report back home to Australia, not knowing I was still in Hong Kong. But back to the Cantonese, I learned quite quickly that if I could speak Cantonese, it'd be more helpful. So I just literally started to teach myself how to speak Cantonese and just learn it by talking to people. So, you know, I would start with simple stuff like, where's the toilet? How much is this? And then, you know, I was interested in Chinese girls. So what's your phone number? Do you want to go out to dinner? I started to learn all those type of things, you know. So first thing you would say is like, hello, which is Lei Ho Ma. And then what's your name? Lei Gua Mang. And then I would say, or Chang Lei Sik Fan, which is let me buy you dinner, that type of thing. And yeah, so I kind of just learning those few phrases and like listening to people, my understanding became really good. And after about 2 years, I was quite fluent. Like I could get by with communicating with people. And because I kind of learned it in the street from people, I had the accent. Whereas, you know, there were a lot of people who might have learnt from a book. They didn't have the accent. Like I would talk to people on the phone, they'd think I was Chinese, which was really cool. Like my vocabulary wasn't huge, but it was good enough to like talk. Like I couldn't watch the news or anything, but I could always get around. I could go anywhere and talk to anybody. And it was quite helpful because on film sets, most people couldn't speak English. Like you might have had an assistant director or a production assistant who could, but the majority of the crew couldn't, and especially the stuntmen. And they're the people I needed to become friendly with because they're the ones that would help me get work. So, and it was also impressive to them if you could speak Cantonese because not many people could. Like I met expatriates that were born there, couldn't speak one word of Chinese, been there 18 years. You know, whereas I made a point of learning about the culture and, you know, learning the language and I mean, you know, people, native English speakers have got a bad reputation for only being able to speak one language. You know, whereas you go to Europe, people can speak 2 and 3 languages minimum. Yeah. So I think it's good to be able to speak a second language. And especially, not blowing my own trumpet, but Cantonese is apparently one of the hardest languages to learn because it's got so many different tones. Like you could be talking about like shoe and prawn sound almost like the same word, but depending on how you say it is which word it is. Oh, I'll go for 9. So the number 9, which is gao, and then teaching someone, or gao lei, I teach you, or I want to fight you, or gao lei, and then like, you know, other words. So it can be the same word, but have 5 different meanings depending on how you say the word. So that's what made it quite a difficult language. Yeah. And the thing is, what people don't realize is the other way around. Cantonese speakers struggle to speak English because you don't really use your tongue very much when you speak Cantonese, whereas in English you use your tongue a lot. So that's why Mandarin speakers learn English easier than Cantonese speakers, because Mandarin you use your tongue a lot, because it's almost like singing. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. But it was really good to learn Cantonese, but it's very different now because, you know, Hong Kong's been taken over by China again. So, you know, they even teach Mandarin in the schools now. So it's not like it was.
All right, thank you. So what was the strangest thing you experienced when you lived in Hong Kong?
Can I swear? Of course. Oh, okay. So Cantonese is what you kind of call a slang language. Like they have a lot of slang. And they have a lot of very, very expressive swear words. Like the way they swear is very like, if you talk about swearing in English, you say English swearing is so basic. If you talk about swearing in Cantonese, it's really descriptive. So Cantonese people have this expression which translated in English means go fuck your mother. But you know how we'll talk about something and we might say fuck every couple of words. Oh, fuck, it was just so crazy and fuck me, you know. So the Cantonese will do that same type of thing, but say this expression which means fuck your mother, and they'll use it to kind of emphasize the part of what they're trying to get across, and they'll be saying that through a sentence. So it's quite funny. Yeah. You know, so okay, see if I can use an example. Oh, like they'll be talking about last night I went out and I got really drunk, and mid-sentence I go, oh, fuck your mother, you know, I got so drunk, and fuck your mother, I just can't believe how much I drank and how crazy last night was, and fuck your mother was just crazy. And that's what they're saying as they're talking. But even though they're saying fuck your mother in there, they're not actually meaning fuck your mother. They're just using it like we use fuck to kind of emphasize what happened. So you're very interesting. But they have, there's an expression in Cantonese which is, it's hamgatan, which means it directly translated, it's go to hell. But the actual translation is, you know, go and dig a hole and kill all your family and dump in it. You know what I mean? Yeah, so you say that to someone, it's not as simple as I'll go to hell. It's like, hamgatan, you know. And again, it's like, you know, how they emphasize it. But it's such an interesting language because it's one of those languages where people will be having a full-on conversation and it almost sounds like they're having an argument, but they're just not, because it's just one of those languages. You know, there's those languages that aren't, you know. But yeah, it's like, you know, little things like that are just so interesting, and just even like, you know, you'll go to someone's home and it might be the whole home would be just your kitchen and living room. Like maybe one small bedroom, and a family of 6 or 8 would live there. So the mother and father would live in the bedroom and all the kids would sleep in the living room and the dining room. You know, but that's just normal to them because it's such a small place and real estate's so expensive. So coming from somewhere like Australia, where we all live in massive houses and everyone's got their own room, it is quite interesting and quite eye-opening. But and that's why people in Hong Kong eat out all the time. You know, they'll have breakfast out, they have lunch out, they might have dinner at home, but they really only go home to sleep because the homes are quite small. You know, it's not like us, we can't, you know, you can't go home and get 10 friends around and have a good time because there's just not the room. So I found that quite interesting.
Cool. I have so many more questions about Hong Kong, but I probably want to go a little bit back to you. I have 2 private questions for you. The one is because you told us earlier you have a kidney disease, and I was wondering, that's my first question, how was it for you? Could you ever drink alcohol or do drugs or anything like this? Or wait, because like if you're surrounded like with actors that probably do those things, and in this environment, like how was it difficult for you to survive it. And on the other side, also, you said you were chasing the girls, like the Asian girls back then. And how did you get into a relationship there? Are you married, or do you have a partner or anything right now? Yeah, just like a little bit more private things about you.
So I did drink while I was in Hong Kong, because especially towards the end, because I was working in nightclubs. I initially would drink quite a lot. Like when we would work from 7 at night to like 6 in the morning, and I would do that 4 or 5 times a week. So on our days off, we would still keep those same hours. So all the staff, we would just go drinking. And I probably drank more than I probably should have under the circumstances. But, you know, I just wanted to have a good time. My last year and a half there, I probably didn't drink much because, funnily enough, I worked in this one club, and I worked there 6 days a week, and every night the same people would come in, and every night the same people would leave drunk. And like 95% of the people that came through that door would stagger out that door at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I just think, you know, witnessing people falling asleep, standing up, and how messy they got kind of actually turned me off drinking. So my last probably year and a half in Hong Kong, I didn't drink much at all. And also, I think I could sense that my health was getting a little bit worse. So I probably realised it was better not to drink. With regards to the Hong Kong, the having girlfriends there, I did have a couple of different girlfriends in Hong Kong. You could probably say, because I could speak Cantonese and I worked in movies, they found me quite interesting, and especially because I could speak the local language, because not many guys could, like Westerners. So I think it was more a curiosity for them. So they would date me, but I'm sure in their minds they never thought it was going to be a long-term thing, because I was a foreigner. You know what I mean? So I only had I dated 2 girls that lasted for a very long time. Like one girl I went out with for like nearly 12 months, and another girl I went out with for about 3 years. And just had a few girlfriends here and there in between. I'm not married, and I'm not in a relationship at the moment. I think so. In the end of my time in Hong Kong, I got really sick and I came back here, and I spent 2 years on dialysis, and then after that I got a kidney transplant. So I've had a kidney transplant now for 20 years. And but I kind of don't talk about that much, because you know, as far as anyone knows, I'm as normal as everyone else. You know, even though I do have these underlying health issues, I've never let them try and stop me. You know, like you've seen what I can do physically. Like I can still kick and do the splits and all that type of stuff. And it's just always been very important for me to, no matter what, to still be able to do my training, and because that's probably part of who I am. You know, training for me is like most people brushing their teeth, because I've done it that long. There have been times where I've been really sick and I have been able to train for extended periods of time, and I've had quite a few different surgeries here or there. This year's not been the best year for me health-wise, but, you know, I just think you just kind of push on. You know, I always like to think, well, there's always someone's worse off. So, you know, I've just got to suck it up and just keep moving forward. And I think that's all you can do. That's what you've got to try and do. And I think starting martial arts at an early age has enabled me to have the mental capacity to try and, you know, every time I get knocked down, I just pick myself back up and I keep going forward.
All right. And you just talked about routines. What are you doing now? Nowadays, I mean. And do you have routines, and how does a day look like?
So when I came back from Hong Kong, I was on dialysis for 2 years. Initially, it was a little bit hard to work, but after about 6 months, I started to do dialysis at home. So I had a machine at home, and I could do dialysis myself. And I did that for about a year and a half. So what it meant was, and what I did was, normally with dialysis, you do 4 hours 3 times a week, which is 12 hours. I did 2 hours every day. So I did it 6 days a week. So the time on the machine was less, which meant I could work and then at the end of the day come home and do my dialysis and then go to bed. I could just put on a movie and do it. So it kind of made it way more convenient work-wise. So my whole life I taught martial arts. When I lived in Hong Kong, I still taught martial arts privately to people. So it just kind of, you know, because then when I came back and lived on the Gold Coast, you know, personal training was starting to become a thing. It just kind of made sense that, well, you know, all I've ever done is train people. So why not, you know, do that again, just more from the fitness aspect than from the martial arts aspect. So that's when I got into personal training, and I did all my courses, and then, you know, started to put myself out there. I started off teaching Tae Bo just when it started to become really big, and I had a reputation as being one of the best Tae Bo instructors on the Gold Coast. And with my martial art background, it was quite easy, you know, because it's like aerobic Taekwondo.
Is it like Les Mills?
No, Tae Bo is Billy Blanks invented that. He's an American martial artist who was a film star. And then when he finished making movies, he just come up with this, you know, body combat. Yeah. It's like body combat, but it's better. And it's more freestyle. So it's not set. It's more freestyle. Like, you've got all your movements, but you can just put them all together however you want. I found it a lot more intense than body combat. But yeah, that was really fun. I did that for a few years and then started personal training, and I've basically been personal training ever since. I still teach classes, not as many as I used to. I went through a phase where I taught a lot of box fit classes because box fit's very big now. I also teach kettlebell classes. I was probably the first trainer in Queensland to incorporate kettlebells in personal training and to start classes. And my knowledge of kettlebells is probably more than most people. They've only become really popular in the last few years. I always say because of CrossFit. You know, CrossFit became big about 5 years ago. And people use kettlebells for American swings and that type of thing. And now people got a lot more exposure to them. You know, you can find kettlebells in every gym. Whereas when I started using kettlebells, I had to buy my kettlebells from America, and most people didn't even know what they were. And the only kettlebells that you could use were the ones that I had. So I'd take my own kettlebells to the gym to train with my clients. And yeah, that's what I've done ever since. My daily routine probably consists of, I wake up in the morning, I do a little bit of mobility in the morning just to loosen up, spend about 5 minutes doing that, and then I'll have breakfast, and then I go to work, and I'll train all my clients in the morning. You know, that varies from 7:30 to 11 or 8 till 11, depending on how many clients I have. And then the middle of the day, I'll normally train. Like some days I'll go for a walk and just stretch. Other days I'll do a hard session where I might do some kickboxing, or I'll do some kettlebells. You know, a lot of it's dependent on how I feel. If I feel really good, I'll do more. If I don't feel as good, I'll just go easy. I tend to make sure I stretch every day because it's important to me to maintain my flexibility. Afternoons, I just kind of relax. A good friend of mine, she's got a little boy, and I look after him quite regularly. I like hanging out with him. He's 6. We have fun together. And then, I probably go home. I'm probably home most nights around 6 or 7. Have dinner, watch a movie, go to bed.
Yeah, thank you.
And I was wondering, you said earlier as well, and you can hear it throughout the whole conversation, that you have this mindset of you feel successful, or you feel satisfied when you make other people become successful. Where did you get this mindset from? Was there like a person or like a situation in your life?
Good question. Yeah, it's funny. Like especially as a personal trainer, like as I said before, I'm 5'7". I'm only about 60 kilos, like I'm a small guy, but it doesn't mean I don't know how to make people big or strong, or, you know, people tend to make the assumption that, well, if you're small, how do you know how to make someone big? You know what I mean? But it's about your knowledge and that type of thing. And I think because I've been involved in like fitness since I was 13 and a half, you know, it's over 40 years now. I've kind of been there and done everything. You know, I've tried the bodybuilding thing. I've tried, you know, powerlifting. I've done weightlifting. I've been a competitive weightlifter. I've competed in martial arts. I've had kickboxing fights, Muay Thai fights. You know, I can train people to box, to kickbox, to do Muay Thai, kettlebells, strength training. Like, I've kind of covered the whole gamut. So I know what works and I know what's important. As we've spoken about, for me, especially with some of the influences I've probably had over the last 10 years, I think it's really important. You want to be able to do what you can at 30, at 60. You know, what's the point of being able to do all these things when you're 20 and 30, and by the time you're 35, 40, you know, you can barely get up and down or walk because you're so injured from the way you trained, and, you know, maybe training too hard or doing the wrong things. Like, something I learned, like, I've been that person that trains for 3 hours at a time, you know, and trains till I can't do anymore. And, you know, fast forward 20, 30 years, I know that there's better ways to train than that. You know, the last probably 10 years, and it's funny, since I got into kettlebells, I became really interested in the science and the history of exercise. You know, and if you go back in the history to like the 50s and the 60s, you know, most of the best strength training protocols and, you know, even stretching methods or training methods all come from Russia and the Eastern Bloc countries. And even though the stuff's 40, 50 years old, it still works now because, you know, they had the best scientists in the world researching that stuff. You know, they've got strength training protocols that they would experiment on with Olympic athletes through, you know, 4 Olympic training cycles, which is 16 years. You know, that's a lot of research to do a study for 16 years. You know, you really know what works and what doesn't. And you know, you can see the trend in the industry. You know, in the 60s and 70s, the Americans were copying all the Russian protocols, and then in the 80s they went away from it, and then, you know, in the late 90s, 2000s, they came back to it because they realized all this new stuff was still not as effective as all the Russian training protocols. So, you know, I'm right into, you know, more's not better. It's all about doing what's effective and what works. And that's how you get the most benefit for people. So as a trainer, the way I look at it is I say to people, look, you pay me for a service. If I'm not providing you with that service, you need to fire me. Because if I go to a restaurant and eat dinner and the food's terrible, I don't go back. So why do people go back to bad personal trainers? And people always go, oh, I just feel bad. I don't want to not train with them, you know. But it's like, well, hang on a minute. They have a responsibility to train you and give you the goals that you want. Yeah. Unfortunately, you have too many trainers that people tell them their goals and they just train them the way they want to train them. You know, they train girls like a guy, and, you know, they don't actually provide the service that the people are actually looking for. Whereas I pride myself in doing that. I say to people when they first come to me, I'm like, okay, what are your goals? I'm like, okay, this is what I do. This is the way I approach exercise and fitness. This will help you achieve your goals. If you're not happy with anything I'm doing, you've got to give me the feedback. So it's all about communicating with your client. And I think that's something that comes with maturity. You know, if you have that maturity and those communication skills and the confidence, you're not afraid to say to someone, hey, if I'm not doing what you want or giving you what you want, just tell me. Plus also, I think me saying that to them gives them the confidence to say to me, well, look, my butt's not looking the way I want it to look. You know, can we do something different? Because I'm not reaching my goals. So this is why I always say to people, I'm like, you know, how I look or what I can do is irrelevant. You want me to make you flexible, or you want me to teach you to punch and kick good, or you want me to get you really strong. You know, it doesn't matter how strong I am or how good I can do anything. Unless I can help you do that, then I'm not good at my job. So that's where my whole thing of like, I see myself as a star maker, not a star, because I was never a natural athlete. I had to work at everything. I do have with martial arts, I have this ability where I can copy things quite easily, but I think it's only because, you know, I spent 10 years doing one martial art and almost perfecting it. So it kind of makes it easier to learn other martial arts very quickly. But I still don't kind of let that get in the way of me teaching other people how to do stuff. The only thing is, I think if I'm going to make someone do something, I have to be able to do it. So if I'm going to make you do pull-ups or make you do squats or make you kick or make you stretch, I have to be able to do all those things too. So then I know the best ways to be able to do those things, so then I can help you do those things. So yeah, I think just learning martial arts from an early age and developing this this work ethic that I got because I wanted to be really good, and I think it probably comes from wanting to be flexible, because I wasn't that flexible. So I literally got every book and every DVD and every video I could on every different type of stretching method that was out there, so I could find the best stretching method to get flexible. So, you know, and then I started training when I was 13 and a half, and I first did the splits when I was like full side splits when I was like 26. So it took me about 13 years because it took me that long to find the best method for me. So I think what that's helped me to do is I look at every person I train and I try and find the best way to teach them and the best way to get the best results for them. And I think my martial art background as a teacher, I approach everything a little bit differently. Because like even when I teach boxing, you know, you look at traditional boxing trainers, the way they teach people to box and the way I teach people to box are very different. My way might take twice as long, but at that same, say, my clients in 12 months and someone else's clients in 12 months, my clients are better, even though it took them longer to get there. Because I follow a very structured, very step-by-step approach. Whereas, you know, you hear of it all the time. People go to a boxing gym and they just throw them in the ring and say spar. They don't know how to punch and they don't know how to block a punch. How can they spar? Whereas I teach everyone how to punch first. Then I teach everyone how to move. Yep. So they don't have to think about punching. They already got the punching down. Then they can move. And after the moving, I teach them how to block a punch. And then once they know how to do all that, you can put it all together, then you can spar. But if you don't know how to block a jab, how are you going to spar? You know, and you're only going to get punched in the face so many times before you go, well, this isn't for me. So I think I've applied that to everything I do with exercise and fitness. And that's what's given me this mindset of, you know, I want to make everyone the best that they can be for them.
Okay, and what advice do you have for clients who don't bring the motivation with them?
Well, let's just say I have a bit of a reputation. So I attract a certain type of clientele. Okay. Like, I'm known for being tough and hard, but I get results. So I don't torture people, but I do push people hard, because I think by pushing people hard, see, for me, again, it always comes back to my martial arts, because I know the benefits I got from it, and I'm like, okay, so the way I see it is, most people aren't that mentally strong. So I think what you need to do is you need to begin to make people physically stronger. As people become physically stronger, then they become more mentally stronger. Once people become mentally strong, the limits on their physical ability are limitless. Okay? So I don't think you can just start with the mind. I think you've got to start with the body. So you've got to gradually make people fitter and stronger. By doing that and letting them see that they're capable of a lot more than they thought they were, this helps them mentally. So it builds their confidence. And once you build someone's confidence, I think you build their mental toughness, because, you know, today I can only do 5 push-ups. Next week I did 10. A month's time I did 20. 6 months' time I can do 50 in a row. It's quite mentally tough to do 50 push-ups straight. But by incorporating the right kind of training methods, anyone can learn to do 50 push-ups straight. And you don't have to kill them to do it. But the byproduct of being able to do that 50 push-ups is you're making them mentally stronger. And my whole point of training people is, what I do with you in the gym should increase the quality of your life outside the gym. So it should make you a better human being. We're training to be better human beings. I'm not training so I've got a really nice bicep in the mirror, or I've got a good six-pack I can show off in summer. I'm training so if I go and play soccer with my friends on the weekend, I can play a game and not be in pain for a week. Or if I want to go for a 3-hour bushwalk on Sunday, I can go for a 3-hour bushwalk. Or if I want to help my friend move their furniture, I can. Or even if you're a mother and you've got children and you've got to pick them up and move them and carry stuff, and you want your exercise that you do every day make you do that job easier. So I think this is where a lot of people have lost sight of what fitness should actually be about. Everyone talks about functional training, but how functional is their training really? Because how much does it transfer outside of the gym? I always talk about, when people do farmers carries, hold 2 weights by their side and walk, you're training so you can go shopping at Coles. Because how many people can carry 3 or 4 bags of shopping in each hand without getting a trolley? Whereas if you do farmers carries and you carry heavy things all the time, that's nothing. So your gym session made you a better human being. It saved you time. It gave you an achievement that a lot of people can't do. Everyone uses a trolley to push all their shopping to their thing. Again, I look at you look at a lot of older people. A lot of older people struggle sit to stand, to just get up out of the couch or to sit back down on the couch. Everyone uses their hands. As a trainer, it's my responsibility to teach people to be able to just get up with the strength of their legs and sit down and not even think twice about it, because you're making them a better functioning human. The same as, a famous trainer I follow always talks about the difference between being young and old is your ability to get up off the ground. Old people fall down and they're stuck there. They don't get back up. So if you're training someone older, you should be training them so they can get down on the ground and get back up off the ground. Because if they can do that, they can do anything. So I always kind of that's my kind of focus, and I think I only attract certain people because of that. People that just want a six-pack or want a butt, won't come to me because that's not my focus. I'm not just going to make it all about how you look. Yeah, sure, I want you to look good, but I want you looking good a byproduct of actually you being fitter and stronger and mentally tougher.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was a very good advice and point of view. Thank you.
So we're running out of time. I think you have a client coming up soon. Maybe if you would like, maybe we could do another session another time at some other point, maybe in a couple of weeks, whenever you're free again. You know you're really very busy. I can assure to all the guests out there that we experienced, especially Mike's training so far, and I can tell you it's quite challenging, but it's very good. So for our guests, how can they find out more about you, or is there any way they can get in touch with you?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I've got a Facebook page which is Without Limit Strength and Conditioning. That's my work page. I've got my personal page which is Mike Miller. And then on Instagram, I've got 2 Instagram pages. One is Without Limit Strength and Conditioning, and I've also got my personal one, which is Flash Legs. And my 2 Instagram accounts are very similar. But yeah, people can find me there, and you know, if they ever want to get in contact with me, they can send me a personal message or a direct message, and I'll get back to them.
Thank you very much. We add this to the show notes.
Yeah, thank you. And now we come to our very last question. So the name of our podcast is Unpopular People. I mean, you're quite popular, but imagine you will be the star in the movies back then and everybody would know you all over the world. What would you do different than you do now?
Wow. That's a really tough question. I don't know. I think it's really hard. I think my passion's always been, I feel like I was born to teach people. You know, that's why I taught martial arts. That's why I taught martial arts in Hong Kong. That's why I'm a personal trainer. I feel like I have this ability where I can teach things to people, and I can find simpler ways or more direct ways that people can understand. You know, I kind of I just find a way to get it across depending on the person. So I think regardless of that type of situation, I still think I would have been I would have ended up doing something where I was, you know, trying to impact people and teach people. You know, if I was a famous movie star, I'd probably, I don't know, teach people acting, or, you know, do a lot of charity stuff and try and impact people's lives that way, because I would have the power to do that. You know, whereas, you know, now I just have the ability to impact people's lives one person at a time. And, you know, I feel if I can make them a better human, then I've achieved, you know. And that's more important to me than money. You know, there's other jobs I could do to make money. I just, you know, I love doing what I'm doing, and I always have, and I have a passion for it. And, you know, I like passing on knowledge.
So thank you very much. Let's call this part 1 for today. And thanks for your time. We know you have to go now, so we wrap this up. Yes. We say goodbye from our side. And
if you have any final words for our listeners, now is the time. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank you both for inviting me here. This has been lots of fun, and I just want to thank everybody for listening, and I hope you enjoy the podcast and you get something out of it. And, you know, if anyone wants to contact me or reach out to me, feel free.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
So this turned out as part 1 of the interview with Michael Miller.
We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
To find out more about Unpopular People and to stay updated about the next part and all the other episodes of our podcast, please subscribe to our newsletter on www.unpopularpeople.com.
Thanks and goodbye.